A strange, strange world. My mother used to tell me that all the time. She used to hold me tight and wind me up in her arms, telling me how she'd protect me from all the harm of the world. She used to never let me go and breathe next to me, nose to nose. She was a wonderful lady, full of poise and grace. She taught me how to defend myself. I needed to have my feet stuck firmly to the ground at the right time, punch or kick with force. A couple of years later, she passed away in her sleep. The autopsy revealed nothing. Nobody knew of anything wrong in her life. The workmates gave away nothing. It was as if she had just decided to leave me all alone in the world. No more cuddles, no more hugs. I was alone. My father slept next to her the night of her death. He took the death pretty harshly. He acted all weird and sad. It was really unnatural for my father. He'd been a very stern man, able to get what he wanted, and his attitude toward the police really surprised me. Well, I don't know. I was suspicious and curious. He never wanted Mom dead, or that's what I thought. I don't know. I remember him on the morning of my mother's death grabbing a bottle of pills and shoving them in his pocket. He left the room really quickly. It was a little suspicious of his activity, that's all. I never told the police. I should have told them, but I couldn't. My father cared for me. He had money and I needed a home. I couldn't live in an orphanage. I'd be alone and without any support. I stuck by him, thinking that he married my mom, well, he'd be able to tell me more about her. I was only 8. I was really attached to my mom, and you know how daughters are. Her perfume made my heart sing. Her laughter made my heart melt. I wanted to know all the things about my mother from my dad. How wrong was I? He wasn't a father. He wasn't even fatherly. A couple of years after my mom's death, he abused me terribly. He would use a stick and bang it against my back. My mother had this piercing laugh that was warm and loving. And as I matured, I possessed this laugh. Whenever I watched a comedy and I laughed, he would lash his baseball bat against my hand. If the baseball bat hit my head, he wouldn't care. He would just yell, "Get out of here! Get out of here! Don't you ever dare make that hideous noise." His eyes would be like daggers, sharp, direct, and cold. He held the grudge against me, but how was I to know? Sometimes, with no specific reason, he would just slap me across the face. It was so quick and simple, and it hurt so badly. So many times it was so often that during the night it'd be swollen, and I'd clutch it and try and comfort it. It was so hard, tormenting. Every time I touched it, it would burn like fire and swell and yell a story of pain and fear. I would just lie there resisting the screams I had inside, the screams of the devil. Worst of all, he never let me help it. I could never get any ice. He would just slap me again. If I said I wanted water to drink, he would just assume I was going to cool my cheeks, so he slapped me again. It was on November 26th that it started to get out of control. I often stayed at school until the sunset. Anywhere was better than home, if I was ever called home. The counselors never really took any sympathy. It was just a local country school, nothing serious. That night, when I returned home, my father didn't take any notice of me, which was weird because he'd usually come next to me and, slap me. He did nothing that night until 2 a.m. He came in and said revolting words. He called me a failure, a stupid woman, but I was no woman. I was only 15, a small girl. He started to ramble about how I was so attached to my daughter, but I had no daughter. Then he started to talk about how I was flirting through the men at work and everything. I realized soon after that he wasn't referring to me, but to my mother. I lied there holding back tears, but my pure, innocent mother committed all these acts. My own mother would have affairs. My own mother would flirt at other men, even when she'd be married. It didn't seem like her. It couldn't be her. It just couldn't. I saw a side that I hadn't seen in my father for a long time. True anger. Real anger. For a second, I felt a little sorry for him. He cried, and I just lay there shivering and crying, trying not to make any noises. He came up to me and started to stroke my hair. For a while, I thought he cared. He whispered it was going to be all right. Then I trusted him. A fatherly side of him came out I had never seen before, but his compassion and love was evident throughout his movements. Ever so slowly, I opened my eyes. For a second, he looked so serene and almost like the father I never had. But after a second, his face turned and twisted. He then punched me, first in the face, then in the stomach. I looked forward into the mirror that was opposite of my bed. I started right down on my face and into my eyes. I didn't notice it before, but I looked so much like my mother. And then he raped me. I don't have anything else to say. Nothing more is all there. Look at my bruises and scars. It's a strange world, Mom. Full of suffering and violence. Domestic violence, that's what they call it in society. I never knew about society. I left home 3 days later. I never knew the consequences of domestic violence. I never knew the outcome it had. School never said anything about this, and I found it all out myself after I had to experience it. I was alone, but not for long. A week later, I started to feel sick and nauseous. I realized I was pregnant with my father's baby. I was tormented. I had no idea, and I had nothing to care for it. During those times, I really considered an abortion, but late at night, on the birthday, I realized that this baby was hope for a brighter future. I promised myself that night. I promised I would raise the baby and nurture it in a safe environment, away from violence and abuse. I promised it would have a full stomach every night. I promised it would be safe and secure when it slept. I promised that it would always be there for it. Always.